Rob here, and this is going to be the first in a series of videos for the video game section of Component 1 of A-Level Media Studies, where we're going to be focusing on the Assassin's Creed franchise. Now, video games will only ever appear in Section B. You're not going to be expected to textually analyze any video games. This is all about industries and audiences. Section B, Component 1. Specifically, we have to look at media industries. We have to consider ownership and funding. So we're going to be looking at the owners of Assassin's Creed, which is Ubisoft. We are going to be looking at regulation, because there's a lot of debates about media violence and things in video games, and effects theory. We're going to be looking at digital convergence. So how have new technologies affected the Assassin's Creed franchise, including the internet? We're going to be looking at, Ubisoft as a producer of the video games and how that relates to the wider industry. We're also going to be looking at audiences and how they're categorized. Mass or niche, specialized if you will. We're going to be looking at audiences. We're going to be looking at a lot of fan culture. So how audiences use and respond to media, how it helps to reflect their identity and create their social interactions. But we're also going to be looking at the wider social, cultural, and historical circumstances around the franchise. Now, we are going to be studying the franchise as a whole, but we're not expected to have studied all of the games in the franchise. We're going to be studying two in particular. We're going to be looking at Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation, which was the original set text for this exam. But we're also going to be comparing that to what was at the time of recording the latest release, which was Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Now, we need to be looking at one extract from the chosen game. Now, as I said, we're not going to be expected to textually analyze any video games, but you need to understand what kind of game or what kind of gameplay is involved. You need to understand the genre of it, etc. Now, it will help if you played Assassin's Creed. It will help if you played Valhalla and or Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation. But it doesn't really matter if you've never played a video game in your life. The internet is full of walkthrough videos and videos of people playing Assassin's Creed. I have done one for Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation where I look at it in media studies terms, and I will do one for Valhalla as well when I get the time. We're going to be looking at some key theories. Karen and Seaton, we're going to be considering the idea that the media is controlled by a small number of companies primarily driven by the logic of profit and power. So we're looking at the idea that Ubisoft is a major video game publisher. They make AAA franchise games. They're one of the big players in the industry. The Assassin's Creed franchise is one of the most popular games in the history of video games. We're going to look at the idea that, they're in it for the money, not for the art. But we're also going to be looking at the fact that this kind of media concentration limits variety, creativity, and quality. It's true of the video game industry, possibly more than any other industry at the moment, that it is very risk averse. Making video games is exceptionally expensive. Marketing them is exceptionally expensive. You can't afford to take risks, so they become obsessed with franchises. On the other hand, there is a vigorous and thriving indie game industry out there as well, which is where the next bit about socially diverse patterns of ownership comes in. We're also going to be looking at regulation, the idea that these are 18 certificate games. They are violent. Regulation aims to protect vulnerable people from harmful material, whilst balancing the audience's right to be able to play such games if they want to. So whilst we shouldn't have children playing games like Assassin's Creed, there's no reason why adults can't. The video games industry has long been a folk devil. It's been the focus of a moral panic in terms of violence and effects theory. So does playing violent video games make us violent? This is especially the case for video games because they're seen as being more interactive than, say, film, which is a more passive experience. You're actively engaging in a quote-unquote violent act when playing a video game, and other than just watching it. So we also have to look at the fact that, once upon a time, if you wanted to buy an 18 certificate game, you had to go into a shop and somebody would ask you for some ID. Nowadays, however, most gaming goes on online. People are playing games online, they are buying games online, where it's much harder to regulate it. Again, Hesma Gelch, much like Karen and Seaton, industries want to minimize risk and maximize audience through horizontal and vertical integration. That's true of Ubisoft. By formatting their cultural products, by using franchises and genres, that's true of Ubisoft. Ubisoft, like many of the largest companies conglomerates, is now a cross-media conglomerate. They operate across multiple industries. They make TV, they make films, they do music, they do tours, they do all sorts of stuff. Again, as I was saying, media effects theory, this is the idea that the media can implant ideas directly into the audience's mind. Does actively playing a video game make you violent? A lot of people would like to say that it does. A lot of people dispute that, and there's very little evidence to suggest it does. So that's where transgressive behavior like violence or physical aggression comes in. And of course, there's a massive difference between aggression and violence. They're not the same thing. So we also need to look at audiences. We look at reception theory, what are the preferred negotiated oppositional readings to these games. We'll look at fandom, which is not something we've done an awful lot of yet, and how fans are active participants in the construction and circulation of textual meaning. We'll look at how fans textually poach their favourite titles and what they do with it. So we'll look at fan culture. We'll look at fan fiction and fan art and cosplay and all that kind of stuff. All of which plays a very important social and cultural role in these people's lives, especially if you're talking online gaming or local area network gaming, LAN gaming, where people can play with one another and against one another. And then there's end of audience theory by Clay Shirky. So, obviously the internet and digital technology have a massive impact on the relationship between media and individuals. There is no such thing as a non-digital video game. So we'll look at how the ability of the audience to speak back to organizations like Ubisoft has affected the games. There's a huge list of syllabus links, the things we've got to talk about. I've been through many of these already. I'm not going to go through them now, but you can read these yourself. Same with these ones. Just pause the video, read them. Right, that's it for the first video. See you in the next one.